for the Sexual Misconduct Survey Council. And so, Kevin put together a wonderful agenda for us today. Um, and I would like, before we begin, just to kind of share a little bit of an update from me. Um, so I have, my year has been busy so far. And unfortunately, that means that given what is going on for me personally and at work, I'm no longer really able to take on the responsibilities of coordination of this subgroup. And so, with the work we're doing at Delaware, at Oregon, and just some other things, I'm going to have to step back from my chair role on this committee, and hopeful that someone can take that stead. Still excited to be a part of this subcommittee, but I don't have the capacity to sort of like, I think in a timely manner and with respect to the work, keep up with, I think, the pace that this committee needs. And so I just want to put that out there as officially going to step down from that, and hopeful that maybe either this meeting or next meeting we can talk about who could step up to the plate to be the next chair. So I just want to put that out for folks before we begin.
First off, Jimmy, congratulations on doing the really hard thing, which is saying these are all the things I have on my plate, and I'm going to let this one go. It's a great role model for me right now. But yeah, and I think it might be good if you all feel like we could to go ahead and choose another chair so that we can continue moving forward. But yeah, it's up to you all.
My suggestion would be that we wait until maybe closer to the end of the meeting after our guests have had time to participate in whatever way, so they can, not have to wait through that part. And also, Jimmy, I shouldn't have said that without saying thank you. Thanks for the work you've done so far. And thanks for setting that boundary for yourself. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all. Hard choice, but again, I think the work demands someone who can spend some more time with it, and I just don't have it. So I appreciate the thoughts, and this didn't come easy. So I hope that we find a good chair. Okay, well, I guess this might be the group, huh, Kevin? Unless you know of other folks who might be jumping on.
No, I do not.
So Rowan, I think you said you put in the most recent outreach plan. I can't remember. I don't know which link is which.
Yeah, it's the second link. So the first link is a list of the colleges, and the second one is the outreach plan with some edits I had done. I think that's the last version that was on Basecamp. So if anyone made any changes and didn't upload it, it would be great if you could share that with us.
So I know that I wasn't able to be at the last big meeting, and so I don't know if we talked about this plan, and I forget exactly what pieces we were updating the big group on, but was there feedback or thoughts about where we had landed with this plan already from the larger committee or council?
It's looking at the notes that I made, and other people may have other recollections, but I think it was with, just those were mostly comments, my notes. But I think in general, the idea was to go ahead and accept and implement the plan. Okay. Just to give you a little bit of, I'm going to go ahead and share this information because I don't know where else to share it. We realized at HEC that we actually, it does look like we're going to be able to bring a designated data person on, at least part-time, onto this project. So we will have someone within HEC who will also be able to give us some feedback on the data pieces of it. That person hasn't been hired, hoping they might be onboarded in January or February. And I think their expertise would be helpful in reviewing the work and maybe making some other suggestions. But I will definitely, when they do come on board, we'll ask them to be sure to come to these meetings. So just wanted to say that.
Great. And I see that it's generally we're going to stick with phase 1 and phase 2 of this plan. Sounds like that's going to be the focus of this group until otherwise we expand our focus. And so at this point, I think we might be, we have some open projects, I believe, an open email to our Title IX folks. And I believe we are going to begin crafting a newsletter. Is that where folks believe we are right now? Is like getting the initial list together. I said I would craft the email, which I will still try to do. And then potentially building a newsletter for awareness that folks can use and share and give an update on the main council's work to this point. So I'm not sure if there's other active projects, but I imagine we're getting into delegation mode in terms of who is on first and who's on second. So I'm not sure if there's any updates on that at this point that you all know of, or other projects that I might be missing that are currently active.
We were able to send out the first version of the newsletter. Kevin, that's linked somewhere on the website, right? I'm not finding it right off the bat to share with folks.
It is not linked on the website.
Oh, okay. My bad. Sorry. I thought it would be. You should, Jimmy, I believe you should have received that. Did anyone else receive a copy of the first newsletter?
I didn't.
You didn't. Okay.
I'll email it to the group in just a minute here.
Okay, thank you. Apologies for that.
So the first newsletter has gone out in some capacity. And so so the email though is still kind of the low-hanging fruit for this part, is kind of getting that out to Title IX coordinators and folks who are initial contacts.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. And so is there outside of the notes that we took, do we need to create something more formal to finalize the outreach plan? Do we need to like incorporate the notes and then send that out to the main committee, or what sort of our next steps there do you all think?
I wonder if anyone has any comments on the outreach plan, and if not, if you want to go ahead and I don't think there doesn't need to be a vote, but you could just ask for, if there are no changes, if you wanted to approve it.
Yeah, it sounds great. I guess if folks haven't had a chance to review the outreach plan, I would take the time now, and then we can just call for any updates or changes and make those, and then approve it, or approve whatever changes we're going to make and move forward.
I think it looks great.
Any others have feedback?
Sorry about that. I was fighting with my microphone for a second, but yes, this all looks great to me. I'm excited to keep chugging on this.
Great.
same. Granted, this is not my area of expertise, but more so Carly's, but looking at it, it looks really good to me.
Can you speak up a little bit? I didn't hear what you said, Lena.
Yes, sorry, I keep having issues during those meetings. I don't know why. It literally doesn't happen outside of those meetings. It looks great to me, I was saying, in short.
Okay, great. So I'm hearing that most people feel comfortable with the plan. It looks like there's no major suggestions or edits at this point. Rowan and Kevin, is that enough for us to be approved?
I believe so. Kevin, is there anything else that needs to be done?
No, there isn't.
Okay, great, perfect. So let's call that plan final then. Anything else on the outreach plan before we go into the contact update? Okay, let's do our school contact update. And so looks like we have different folks assigned to different tasks here in terms of maybe collecting information. Looks like Rowan, you already have the list of current Title IX coordinators at places that you just mentioned where we're responsible for implementing the survey. I don't know what Jennifer was doing. Maybe she was talking with the Title IX coordinators. But does anyone know what her role was in the collection of the contacts? I can't remember.
I believe you're right. She was going to check with the Title IX coordinators.
Yeah.
And
And she was gonna, oh, sorry, go ahead, Rowan, sorry. She was gonna get their contact info and check in with them to see if there's another person at their universities that should be the primary contact.
Yeah, that's kind of what I remembered, but I don't think we've heard from her, and I don't think she's on the call today. So that might be something we loop back to her about. And like I said, I will work on that final contact email, and I will send it out to this group. I think we had a goal of having that done by the end of this month. Was that what folks remember? Okay. And so Rowan, I feel like there was some draft of an email, or maybe I was thinking about the newsletter that had a draft. I can't remember where we were, so I apologize.
honestly, I don't remember where we were either. I will go through and find the drafts and see what I can pull up.
Okay.
One thing I'd like to suggest, and Lena, sorry if this is too much, but it would be, I think, I would love to have the folks who are doing advocacy work at the institutions on this mailing list, if that's possible. And Lena, I don't know if you have that list or not, but and Lisa, you may have more information about that too, but I just think it'd be really helpful to because there are going to be times when we're going to want to directly outreach to the advocacy folks and say, hey, we've got this survey we'd like you to review. You know, can you give us some feedback on it from their perspective as well as from the Title IX coordinators?
Looks like Lena said that they can, or she can compile that list. Great. And then for the email as official communication, is that something that needs to be approved by this group or the larger committee before we send it out, or is that something we can send freely?
I believe that you can go ahead and decide that's what you want to send. And
Okay.
it might be nice to, send a courtesy out to the other members of the council, just saying, hey, we're
Okay.
planning on sending this out and it'll be going out at such and such time.
Okay.
Generally for this stuff, because it is through the council, it would be me sending it on behalf of, so yeah.
Great.
Or Kevin, yeah.
Okay, great. So like I said, I know that I'm for folks who didn't hear, I'm gonna step back from the chair responsibilities. So I'm happy to get a draft out to this group. I'm trying to think about timing. I know we wanted to do by the end of this month. Is there a reason why we should change that timing? Um, or still try to get it out before the end of the month?
I think like end of the month, probably. I mean, let's see, survey stuff won't go out until. Just trying to think about like what other the timelines for people, right?
Mhm.
The draft survey should be ready about, I'm hoping that we'll have it in January, but honestly, it'll probably be February. So
Okay.
and we do need to develop a pilot plan for how you want to pilot that and collect that information.
Great. So let's stick to the end of the month then. If there's
Yeah,
no
getting
like,
something out this month might be good, so they have time
Yeah.
to sort of prepare for the idea that, right,
things are
in
coming.
February they'll be doing some more.
All right, great. And Jennifer, since you're the most connected to the Title IX folks, would you be willing to like serve as like a person who can bounce ideas off of in terms of what would be
Yes.
important? Okay.
And I was just looking because we have our next meeting is coming up, so I just wanted to let you all know when the next regional meeting was. I believe it is the 19th. So all the Title IX coordinators meet again on the 19th.
Okay. So it sounds like it also might be helpful to have something prepared by then.
Or at least maybe just something that I could share that like, hey, we'll be sending you something on like in a week or two, and these are
Yeah.
some of the things that might be in there, just like just a little heads up for them. And then they might be able to ask some questions too, like, well, will there be any information about this or whatever that might be useful to us, right?
Yeah.
So I'm happy to have a discussion with them. I'll put it on the agenda.
Okay. Great. And Jennifer, did you have any? I know that you just popped on, but was there any? I know that you were going to reach out to timeline coordinators or meet with them somehow, and we were just seeing if you had an update on any of the communications you've had. If not, that's okay. But
No, so I did talk to them. They were really happy about the idea that we would be sending some initial like outreach information, because a lot of them are very like just very confused. Like, I don't know what we're gonna do. And as far as like how are we are we getting a survey? Like, how is this all working? Right. So they have lots of like the nuts and bolts questions. And so I think if we can answer those, in some of those, the first, one or two communications that we have with them, that would be really useful. So we did have a conversation about it, but mostly it was a lot of just like, how am I supposed to get this out? Is it coming to me in a way that I can distribute it? Or am I, and I was like, no, I think we're going to all be using our own deployment systems. So they had questions like that. Like a lot of their stuff was very like operational, right? How am I going to get this thing implemented on my campus? And I think really that's their biggest concern, is just, and what will happen if they can't get response rates, right? Like those were the big questions, right? Like, I don't think that we'll be able to get 100% of our students. How many am I, like, what am I supposed to be shooting for? How am I going to do that? Like, those were the big questions.
Okay. That's really helpful as I drop the email. I think gives a sense of what folks are like. I don't care about this other stuff. I want to know, like, let's get to what
I think they're really
implementation looks like.
trusting us to put together a good survey, and that most of their questions are on, how do I get this deployed on my campus? How do I make sure that I'm being effective, right? In getting the message out and in getting responses. That's really been the biggest, that, and then there's a lot of questions about what are we doing with the data, but I think we'll get to those questions eventually.
Okay, so how about we have information about when we'll send the email by the time you meet with the Title IX coordinators in a few days on the 19th?
And I know also the Title IX coordinators at the last meeting had requested that Daniel from Rep Hartman's office, I can't remember his last name all of a sudden. But he works in Rep Hartman's office. And right, Rep Hartman is the author of the bill, or the one who put the bill forward. And they were talking about having Daniel come to a regional coordinator meeting to answer some questions. And I know that I had brought up having Rowan perhaps come and talk about the committee. And so I don't know if oh, I'm sorry, I see stuff in the chat. And so they had wanted to know, like had mentioned maybe having Rowan also come and talk to them about some of the survey stuff. I don't know if anybody had reached out to you, Rowan, about that.
No, not at this time.
Okay. I'll get with Angela and see. Angela Fleischer is usually the one who coordinates all of those meetings, so I'll send a message to her and see if she's gonna reach out.
All right, so Jennifer, I'll work with you on the draft of that, and then we'll get a draft sent out to folks. Yes, so we will do that. That'll be my parting chair gift, and then I'll do other work. Are there other updates on the school contacts that we need to be thinking about?
I put an update on Willamette's in the chat for you, Jennifer. I don't know how to update it myself and then upload it. I would if I knew how. I might be able to figure that out. But Amanda Hanchick is our new Title IX coordinator. Also wondered if Willamette's Title IX coordinators have attended the meetings that you were talking about all the time.
We have had Willamette Title IX coordinators in the past. I don't think that we've had one recently. It's really been a very core group in the last probably 5 or 6 months. But I know there's been a lot of change, like a lot of turnover in Title IX coordinators, like Western just got an official, like they just hired someone a few months ago who's like fully Title IX now. Because they had
I think that's
their
Sarah.
CEO doing it.
Sarah's here in the meeting. I think that's Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah Glasscock is theirs, and then I know that there's 2 schools that are currently using Grand Rivers.
I
Yeah,
think there's a
and
few more than 2. Yeah.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
there's 2 that
Yeah.
were coming that are now using
Okay.
Grand Rivers, and now we don't see them anymore because Grand Rivers Title IX coordinators don't attend those meetings, which could be an issue for us. But I could always reach out to Darcy and see if she can help me get in touch with those people.
And that's Amanda, who I put Amanda Hanchick as Willamette.
Is yours, okay.
Through Grand River Solutions. And I think it would be great for them to at least be invited and maybe let me know if they do or don't attend. And then I can try to figure out a way to make sure they will attend because I know they're contracted and I hope they'll be able to attend.
Yeah, so I don't know if like they just are unaware that we have this meeting and right. And so so I can reach out to Darcy too and see if she can give me a list of like if there's other Title IX coordinators who are GRS employees that are right. Yeah, I'll spend my day trying to do that, trying to get a comprehensive list put together, an updated one, because I think that there's quite a few that have changed.
So let me know if I can help you with that.
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
Sure.
And just so you know, I have been sending out emails to everybody who is on the list that you've got. I have an email I didn't put the email contacts in our list. So if there are people who are on that list who have not been receiving emails, or if there are updates, I really appreciate it if folks can send me that information directly, and then I can make sure that I've got them on the agency update list. And they also would receive things like the newsletter and that stuff. So
Okay.
Great. Well, again, thanks everyone for getting that work done and getting the contact list updated. And so, like I said, we will have information about a draft and when we plan to send that prior to the meeting with the Town 9 coordinators. So Jennifer has information to share. And also, it sounds like there's some interest in also providing an update to the advocates as well. And so we'll share that information to this group so that you have a sense of our timeline and what the draft looks like for also some input as well. So we will put that in base camp. Keep forgetting how to do the coordination stuff here. So we will get that to this group and get dates and timelines soon. And so if there's no other business on that matter, I guess we can go to other business, which includes a new chair selection.
Jimmy?
And go ahead.
Yeah, I apologize for not bringing this up earlier in the meeting. So Kelly was invited to this meeting based on discussion of at the last meeting that he could might be able to provide insight on the IRBs and how they
Okay.
would view reviewing the surveys once it's
Great.
finalized.
Well, then let's have Kelly go first then before we do the other business.
Yes, thank you. I'm Kelly Strawn. I'm the Associate Provost for Institutional Research at Willamette University and a member of the faculty, the sociology faculty. I apologize, there was some confusion the last time. I didn't realize that I'd been formally invited to the last meeting. And so I didn't show up, and I hear y'all were waiting for me. So my apologies for that. But can somebody give me Kevin just introduced this. I could start out with IRBs, but what is it exactly that you all sort of most want to know? What can I lead with that would deliver the biggest bang for the buck here? Is it IRB introduction? Should I start there, or are there other issues that have come up?
I think a couple of questions that I personally am kind of interested in is with IRBs, not all institutions have IRBs. So, is there, like there's a Title IX coordinator meeting, is there an IRB meeting, or are they all independent at the institutions? In other words, is there a way to communicate with a professional organization? I think the other question would be, at what point would it be most valuable to share information with the IRBs, and what's the best way to do that? Is it going to them, to the IRBs individually, or going through someone else on the campus, and who is that person usually most likely to be?
Well, so for those of you who don't know, an IRB is an institutional review board, and they exist on any campus. I mean, hopefully they would exist on any campus that's doing research with human subjects of any kind. But they have to exist wherever you're getting government funding for any of the research that you're doing. And so these organizations are responsible for making sure that that research that is done follows ethical requirements, fair treatment of subjects, and just a bunch of things that would broadly fall under the ethics of research. They have research is sort of funny this way in that there's almost no fixed line that can't be crossed. I mean, it does sort of follow the no harm to subjects kind of logic of the medical oath, but the importance and the value of research to society and is often taken into account when considering whether or not a research pushes sort of the boundaries of what would normally be considered sort of standard lines that you don't cross as far as the kinds of questions you ask. A survey like this one definitely gets near that because of the kinds of personal revelatory questions that are being asked. That being said, an IRB is generally concerned with research that's going to get published and disseminated. It's trying to protect subjects that might be identifiable. Well, actually, there's two sides. the trauma that anybody who's participating in the research might experience because of the research itself, and making sure that it's conducted in a way that doesn't harm the participants of the research, and then how that information is disseminated and what kind of potential harm may come from that. This is sort of a gray area, this particular instance, this survey, because A, it's legally mandated, which is a different sort of impetus than the general research model, which is academics doing it as their professional, as their vocation. And B, there is, but there isn't sort of a plan for dissemination, right? Like I don't think anybody. Well, I don't know. This is an open question. This is one that all of us at the top committee level, all of us who are participating here, will need to think about. Like, what is it? What kind of constraints should there be on how the HEC processes this, who they give access to for research purposes, what kind of public summations come out of it, things like that. So these are all questions that an IRB would ask. And so one of the real big challenges for this survey is, A, it's mandated, so we're supposed to do it, bumps into the law. And B, it doesn't have its origins in an existing institution that could get IRB approval for everyone. So for instance, Willamette just finished doing the Healthy Minds study for the second time. We're working towards becoming a JED campus. We're almost there. If any of you are familiar with that, Healthy Minds is run out of the University of Michigan, and the University of Michigan's IRB has given that survey its approval, and that IRB approval is generally considered acceptable to all other institutions, so they don't need to send it through their own IRB. Because we don't have that kind of centralization, we probably need to ask each of our IRBs to do it. I don't know. This is something, Jimmy, you're at Oregon, is that right? University of? I mean, I wonder if it isn't possible for us to sort of see if maybe the University of Oregon or Oregon State or Portland State, one of the big ones, one of the R1 schools, couldn't get sort of a blanket IRB approval for this. I mean, it could be Willamette University for that matter. Our IRB is high functioning, very rigorous, follows all the same standards as any other school. It just might be easier for the whole project if it comes from one sort of larger place. I'm not even sure how I want to justify that larger is better, but I don't know. Maybe it's the R1 label that comes with any of those schools. I personally think that it's a good idea for all IRBs to either give approval or have the approval of a highly regarded, highly respected, well-established. I guess that's the rationale for Oregon State, is that they are well-established, have received billions of dollars over the decades from the federal government for research purposes. Their IRBs say that this passes the IRB standard. I think that all schools could comfortably use that as the imprimatur for saying we can still show it to our IRB if we want to, but we don't have to. We feel comfortable that it's been done by a reputable place. I feel like I had one other thought that I want to share about IRBs. It'll come back to me. Does that sort of get it started? Get the conversation started?
Yeah. I think most, just as a background, when we met with the folks from PERC, they did say that most of the institutions, I think all of the institutions, the IRBs had found it to be exempt from IRB approval. So, which is at least as good as approval, actually, because it means
exactly.
Yeah.
Justin, props to you. I just saw your comment there. Where I was going there. Sorry. I'm glad that my logic then was the same one occurring to somebody else in the same field. So that I think is probably a logical avenue for us to go down. Exempt status, Rowan, means that anybody who participates knows very clearly what they're getting into, and the risk to harm to them is quite low. And what exempt technically means, at least the way we interpret it, is that the IRB chair alone can make the decision. That by looking, you still have to propose it. This is one of the things that we struggle to teach students is you don't get to decide that it's exempt. You still have to send it to the IRB, and they still have to look at it. But it saves the whole long process of the whole committee looking at it, going through steps, sending revisions and whatnot. It's usually just the chair's decision. You are exempt. You can proceed. It usually turns on the crucial characteristic of informed consent, which is that anybody who looks at the survey is clearly told what the purpose of the survey is, what the general content will be, and makes explicitly clear that their participation is entirely voluntary. I personally think that they should also make very clear how the data will be processed, who will have access to it, and what kinds of public dissemination might occur. So to me, all of that would fall under sort of the standards for being exempt. This one, I mean, I think we will all agree that in the end that those are all very appropriate caveats to put at the beginning of the survey, regardless of who's distributing it. And we will undoubtedly sort of make very clear to institutions that it's, you know, while you might fiddle with the language, it's sort of non-negotiable. This has to be the preamble to any invitation and to the survey itself, or else it's not a valid survey. But I still worry about the content because of what we're asking about and because of the potential harm to participants. I expect whichever IRB looks at this to look at it pretty darn closely, and maybe even, I mean, I think there's sort of a 25%-ish chance that it wouldn't be considered exempt because of how widespread we're delivering it and how probing some of the questions we've talked about over on the survey writing committee might actually be, and that those might then potentially pose harm to subjects. I think in the end, even the nature of the survey will lead to an exempt decision because of the full disclosure that will be part of what we will promise, and the informed consent piece where people know they can opt out, they're not required to do it, they can discontinue. So yeah, I feel like I'm now just sort of lecturing. I'll stop, but
I guess one consideration too that I really, so each institution owns its own data and processes its own data, holds it confidential and analyzes it. And then they send that summary of the analysis, not the data. We never received the data at HEC, just the summary of that analysis. So I think one of the things that the Outreach and Implementation Committee is really concerned with that kind of falls into that too is that I'm sure the IRBs are going to ask, who's holding the data, how is people's confidentiality protected? Because if we're telling them this is anonymous, don't worry, it can't be traced back to you, then that has to be a promise. And that's actually in the statute that it has to be anonymous. It cannot be identifiable, and the information can't be held in an identifiable way. So I feel like that's going to be kind of a discussion that we need to think about. And that's why I'm wondering about getting some input from some of the IRBs, because if you're using Qualtrics, there are ways that you can make that data anonymized. You can have the IP addresses stripped before you get the data back, but I'm not sure that that can be done with the schools that are using like Google Forms or Teams Forms.
Agreed. There will need to be really clear guidelines, not just about how schools can collect. I mean, and Rowan, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, it makes sense to me, so I'm glad that it's in the statute, but I don't want to forget that the statute requires anonymity. There's a lot of ways to lose anonymity without just a simple identifying characteristic on that line, right? Like anybody who falls into those sort of small cell counts because they're in a small, rare demographic, you know, if the data get published and summarized and one campus, you know, identifies one person with X, Y, and Q characteristics, then everybody assumes they know who that person is, and you lose your anonymity, even though the answers aren't linked to it. That's sort of a second level exposure, if you will. So yes, we'll have to have pretty clear, but I think some of that'll go even further than that, which is like, how long can institutions keep the data? Who can actually see it? What is a minimum acceptable storage and security protocol for having the data, in somebody's hand. How long can they keep it? Are you required to dispose of it after a certain point, after you've used it in a certain way? Things like that are also, IRBs will ask about these things as well. So which committee is going to be responsible for those sorts of guidelines? Is that a top level question, or does that mean that we're missing a committee, a subcommittee here for like actual protocol and data security or something like that?
Right now, that would be this committee. And hopefully, like I said, getting the data person from HEC on board as soon as possible so that they can help with some of this stuff. But I think those crucial IRB questions, I know that we have some experts on this committee who work directly with IRB, but I think that maybe one of the things that we could do would be create a list of questions that IRBs might have, a list of protocols that need to be developed, and then start using that as we develop the implementation plan.
There are to that, not addressing that entirely, Rowan, but I'm pretty sure that Willamette University's IRB application is not behind a firewall. That is, you could access it and see exactly what the application asks to be addressed. If I'm wrong about that, just let me know and I'll copy it off and share it with people. There's absolutely nothing proprietary about it at all. And so consequently, I would guess that most schools have that available as well. And if not, I'm sure we could do the same thing, which is to just reach out to a couple of them. If we really do think that it's going to be Oregon or Oregon State that we ask to sort of be the sort of flagship IRB provider here, then that would be the place to start to look at those. And those will be, my thinking, Rowan, is that those will be their questions. Like they are unlikely. If the committee or if all of us together are able to provide a clear enough detailed plan, they probably wouldn't have additional questions that they hadn't already asked in the application. So I think the logical starting point is there rather than. Sorry, somebody was.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say my research when I've done this, I think a flagship IRB is an interesting model in this case, particularly because each institution will own their data. And I think when we do larger surveys, usually the data is held by a central group that's then dispersed. So I think we run up against IRBs being like, well, I think it would be difficult for let's say Oregon's IRB to say okay, they were going to want a secure plan, et cetera. But if everyone is implementing it on their own using whatever systems, I think that would be complicated. And then the other thing that helped me get exempt status for some of my research was resources that were available on our campus as folks were filling out the survey. And so collecting where do people go, creating stops, in the survey so that every opportunity to stop had resources. And so I think to me, there's a couple of questions that would probably increase the coordination effort if we did a flagship, but I do wonder mostly about the data piece. If there's not a central location that's then dispersed, if it is truly every institution has their own. But I also wonder if there's a model where smaller, I think Justin's suggestion is interesting, is could those smaller schools pair with a larger institution to get their IRBs reviewed, or places that don't have an IRB team up with a place that does. And so I don't know, there's a couple different models there. And again, I'm happy to approach our IRB, our assistant, our vice president for research and ask, in the chair of IRB and ask to see if it's even possible, I guess. And then we can go from there.
No, that's a good point. The who controls the data might be a crucial turning point. Justin.
Yeah, I just want to add on. So I work in the community college, and for LBCC, at least I am part of the IRB, but it's very informal. Our hope is always to have if someone's doing research from outside the campus, we use their IRB as the baseline, and I review, the recruitment materials and the exemption or what have you from their IRB. But we're, in terms of the community college world, one of the larger in terms of a data office. I mean, we represent actually 5 different institutions in the state in terms of data because they don't have infrastructure. So without having something like this, I think you really do set this back. So even if it's not accepted at Willamette, but if we can get U of O or Oregon State to do something, and even if it has some guidelines maybe we give that these are the considerations that are unique to each campus, I think that will help immensely for the smaller institutions.
Yeah, I think that what, given the concern that Jimmy outlined, that I still think that most small places would be happy to treat, for their own institutional purposes, would be happy to treat the imprimatur of the University of Oregon. I think, Justin, this I think is what you're saying, right? That they would be happy to sort of treat it as adequate for IRB purposes for their own set of responsibilities. Ideally, in my worldview, that would flow through an IRB at the local place or a research organization, some combination of it like yours, Justin. So I think we can solve this. In other words, that's just my sense, but I think I would still agree that I guess, Jimmy, just letting Oregon or Oregon State know that the other schools are going to use their decision as kind of a precedent for their own considerations might be all that we really need to sort of do that way. I don't know. This can all be solved, though. I'm not worried about it. I mean, again, the IRB is something that institutions both choose to do for their own ethical sort of commitments, but also for their sort of agreements with the Department of Education and the money that we get from NSF and places like that. So if a school doesn't have an IRB, I assume they're not doing research using any kind of public money. At that point, I think this council simply needs to make very, very clear what the minimum required expectations for data collection, data management, all of that actually are.
Andrew, I'm curious if every voice has had discussions like this, if there are any other states that you're like, this is how they handled it, or if there's any model language that every voice is aware of that we might crib from.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm definitely relatively new to the task force space, so not that I'm aware of. What I am aware of, though, is that Oregon is very, very proactive when it comes to the IRB things. So the steps we're taking now, I can guarantee are only going to help us.
Yeah, well, I can certainly, kind of get an inside, kind of pick their brains about what possibilities could exist. And yeah, even if we use their decision and guidance as a model for the other schools, um, I do think that's an interesting path forward. But I agree with you. I don't think any of these are stoppers. They're just considerations for like how we need to approach this. But yeah, I can certainly on the front end just reach out to Oregon State as well, just to kind of get a sense about, this might be the first time they're hearing about it, but I'll try to do some digging. So
Well, it'll be good for them then. They should know that this is out there.
yeah, I agree.
Soon, right?
Yeah. Jimmy, if there's anything that I can do to help, like put together a little cheat sheet, maybe with some, this is what is going to be required. This is when it's going to be required. This is the kind of data that's collected. This is, what the statute says. Maybe take a look at some of the other states and see if they've got some information for their IRBs that might be useful.
I would love that. That would be super helpful.
Happy to do that.
Yeah, because I think my conversation with my IRB would be pretty casual, but with Oregon states, it might be a little bit more formal. So yeah, anything you can provide would be helpful.
You can sort of send a joint email if you want, Jimmy, and I can help you do it if you want. If you feel better having sort of a couple of different people involved in this, so that it doesn't sound. I'm happy to team up, help communicate, and but I'm also fine if you want to just save time and do it yourself. But let me know.
No. It certainly can help. I think it can only help to have someone who's an expert helping talk to IRB in IRB language.
Okay, there's my email, so you don't have to look it up.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Also, as someone who has shepherded a sexual misconduct survey through the process, I think your input is incredibly useful, Kelly.
Good. Well, I'm happy to help. The topic notwithstanding, this is all sort of wonky stuff that I just kind of enjoy doing as an academic. So.
One question I have one question for you, Kelly, and we can also talk about this offline since we both work at the same university. But I wonder if you have tips as someone who has done so many surveys here, who the survey should be sent out by. I keep asking that question. I'll keep asking everyone.
Not me or any of my counterparts at other institutions, for starters. Not because we have a bad reputation, just because we're recognizable and treated probably as borderline junk mail. Somebody with this is a really good question. If you let me just boast a little bit, we didn't know we were going to succeed at this level, but we're really happy with it. We had such a high HMS response rate that they reached out to us and said, "What did you do?" Because we got up to 36, 37%, both at the first and the second response. And the second one especially really surprised us because we just didn't think. And so Don Thompson, one of our colleagues here, sort of sent them a long list. I'm sure you wouldn't mind if I shared with you like what the different ways we sort of reached out to people were. But the key thing there, Lisa, was that it came from him, right? Don sits in a spot in our campus where he, I think, is about as central in a very metaphorical way as just about anybody could hope to be. I think that if a Title IX coordinator, for instance, were the one that sent the email out, there'd be a high rate of return for anybody that exists in an orbit that touches and values that, and a low response rate from everyone else. I mean, you're trying to sort of balance that somehow, but also the crucial thing is that it may come from one person, but the on-campus promotion, what we think worked here was that we were fairly relentless about going to every different angle of communication. We have 5 different faculties. We went to all of their faculty meetings more than once and asked them to promote it in class. We had posters up all over campus. We had emails going out. There's a bunch of different ways that I personally think that the crucial thing is when some network on a campus that students are invested in tells them this is really valuable for you as a student. That message from respected people from multiple places, that's what increases. So faculty in class, I think, was probably crucial. Students in their campus life networks with their campus life leaders in their different groups. So like you and your students, Lisa, getting the message about it from people they work with and respect has a huge impact on it. And then appreciating that students don't read email anymore unless they proactively get told they should because there's something important in there, right? So it's that sort of thing. So who should it come from? I think you find the person that you think is most likely to be actually looked at because it's coming from them and sort of broadly respected by the campus community. And that was, in our case, our health center director. Every community is going to be different, of course. So, I mean, I think it's a conversation about what are those kind of dynamics in your community that can be leveraged and can be tapped. And then it just takes the effort of everybody who's doing it to actually follow through. I think that was all the people on the JED HMS committee really leaned into it and really followed through on what they said they were going to do to help promote it. And I think that's why we succeeded so well. I mean, as I saw some people kind of eyes perk up. Yeah, 1 in 3 people is a rather astonishing response rate for anything these days. So we're really, really excited about that.
Yeah, and I think this committee would especially love to see that list of things that you think that you did right to get that kind of a response rate, because it would be great to include those in the implementation plan or guides that we come up with.
Yeah, I will, so that I don't forget, I will track it down right now. And then Rowan, should I just send it to you and Kevin and you guys can distribute it? Okay. Sounds good. You all still have some business to wrap up, so I'll stop talking about IRBs and let you wrap your business unless you have any questions. Oh,
well, thank you for coming back, and I'm excited to work with you to kind of figure out, what's possible with our larger institutions. So, yeah. So so like I said earlier in the meeting, if folks didn't hear, I need to step back from the chair responsibilities of this group. And so I guess this will be business for next time. I don't think there's enough time to do it today unless Kevin, Rowan, you think there's a fast way to get this done?
You can choose any way you want to do it. You can just say, is there anybody who wants to do it? And that person could say yes. Or you can decide to do it in a more formal way. It's entirely up to you guys.
Okay.
You folks.
Well, is there anyone or any persons who would like to take over as the chair of this group, or co-chair? That's also an option.
What I want to do and what I have time to do are two very different things. I really would like to help out a little bit more on this committee, but unfortunately, I am a one-woman show on my campus with 2 roles, and I don't have any additional time.
Yeah, I second that. I am a staff of 1, so my plate is very, very small.
How many hours a month is involved, do you think?
It's probably not that many hours. It's just like squeezing it in. Like I think probably if I was keeping up, probably maybe like 1 or 2 hours a week, just like emails, doing things I should have been doing, things like that. But I don't think it's a huge commitment. But it looks like folks are heading out because we have 10 o'clock. So maybe we'll hold this till next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll consider it between now and then.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, well, with that, I think it's time to adjourn so folks can get to their 10 o'clocks.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see you.